Okay, here's Ken.
Oh, hey, Cam. Hey, buddy, what's up?
Hey, Tom.
What's up, man? How's it going?
How are you? So the discussion is CRT, is it?
That's what it is. What's your beef?
Well, my beef is really that it's a smokescreen. CRT isn't about anything legitimate. It's just an excuse to punish a certain group.
What do you feel? How do you feel that it calls for the punishment of one group?
Well, it calls for the punishment of whites. I think we can all agree that that's pretty much where all the ire is directed toward.
So no, I don't feel like that's the case. Why do you think that it's calling for the punishment of whites?
Well, if you name a group as an oppressor and you name that group as the entire reason why all other groups aren't succeeding, then one would assume that you must punish that group. Because how can you level out the playing field if you do not make that group less prominent in whatever positions it currently holds?
So in Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti, you're familiar with Ibram Kendi, I'm assuming, yeah?
We
I'm
were
familiar
just
with
reading
him.
Ibram Kendi. That's
And
how.
I'm
That's how it
also
started.
familiar with his friend, what's her name? She wrote White Fragility.
They're not friends because they do
I
not
think they're
agree
friends.
on most things.
Ooh.
So White Fragility, first of all, is a stupid book that makes a case for I think it's like just basically implicit bias training, right? Where we're going to have these workshops where we just like teach people to not be racist and to ignore their implicit biases, and these are honestly nothing but like little PR stunts that corporations do in order to act like they've actually made progress in their racially disparate outcomes that they see in their companies. Implicit bias training has been demonstrated to do nothing, either nothing to fix people's implicit biases, or if it's done really badly, it can actually make white people more racist as a result because they feel like they are, like you said, being punished
Being
or blamed.
attacked. Yeah.
Correct.
Well, you've opened up a lot of can of worms there. For one, it doesn't make one racist to defend themselves. If I call you a bad person, an oppressor, if I tell you that you are the reason for my not having succeeded and you defend yourself, you're not being racist when you defend yourself.
I'd agree with that.
You're rationally saying, look, you're putting all these things upon me, and really it's just a fault on your own. That's the entire point of CRT.
I don't think it's a fault of their own. So what CRT like takes issue with is the fact that the systems that are in place seem to be put in place in such a way that we still have these racially disparate outcomes despite having no expressly racist laws, right?
Right. And why is that? Why do we have disparate outcomes?
This would be due to the fact that there are racist policies, which is what Ibram Kendi draws a distinction between, right? It's not about racist people, it's about racist policy.
But we don't.
No. I know that we don't have any explicitly racist laws, right? But look at stop and frisk in New York when that was going on, for example, right? 97% of the people that were actually being stopped and frisked were people of color. Now, it never said in the law, these are the people that you need to see stopped and frisked, right? However, the outcome of the law was still racially disparate, correct?
Correct, but
so that is what we would call a racist law under CRT.
No, it's not. I mean, if you're someone that categorizes disparate outcomes in the opposite, if it does not favor non-whites, and sure, you would consider that more blacks being stopped is a racist policy. But let's be realistic here. Once stop and frisk was started in New York City, didn't the crime rate go down?
I believe that the crime rate kind of went down nationwide at the same rate without stop and frisk laws.
It went down significantly in New York City.
It went down significantly in New York. It went down significantly nationwide. Again, this wasn't just because of.
And why did it go up in the last 2 years? Why did the crime rate in the United States go up in the last 2 years?
I don't know. There might have been a massive event that led to a lot of people being laid off and not having as much wealth.
No.
And generally speaking, poverty leads to higher crime rates. So like,
No, because
it's
poverty
entirely.
doesn't lead to higher crime rates. Because if poverty
Whoa,
did
whoa! Where are you getting that from, my man? Yeah,
easily,
Here,
no.
real quick.
What is
I gotta
favorite-
run to the restroom. I will be right back.
Okay. You
Okay,
don't.
well, Spectre,
so-
let me educate you. I don't want to be rude, but let me educate you. One of the poorest states in the entire country of the United States is West Virginia. West Virginia is 90% plus white population.
Mhm.
Do you know the crime rate of West Virginia? It is almost not recordable because it is so insignificant. So why aren't all of these poor whites from Alabama and Louisiana and West Virginia, why don't they have the same crime rate as those recently unenfranchised people from New York City and LA who were told, look, we're going to unpolice you because we feel we're hurting you. And then they commit more crime. Why didn't that also happen to the white population? Why didn't the white population who are poor also increase their crime rate once this lax policing policies?
It did in other states that are actually like the poorest in the nation, right? Kentucky, for example. The crime rate did go up. And do you mean to tell me that West Virginia's crime rate did not go up in the last few years?
I would be interested to know when how high it went up. I would love to know because you do realize that the crime rate in West Virginia is so negligible that it is almost not worth mentioning.
Yeah, well, the population of West Virginia is also pretty low, but let's look.
So what?
Pull up the data right now.
It doesn't stop you from committing crime. Because if you're poor, one commits crime, right? If we're going by this metric. But this problem is you assume that everybody.
No, there are several studies that demonstrate that, like, yes, you can adjust for income, and the crime rate between, like, your 1350 meme that you guys like so much, right? If you adjust,
what are you doing, you guys? What is this?
People who make these kind of arguments, stop.
No. What you're making an argument which requires much more evidence than my argument. You require an argument that says that all groups of all people commit crime at an equal level. That is unscientific. How the hell do you factor that?
Because like I was about to explain, when you adjust for income, right? And like compare white people to black people, the amount of like violent crime and nonviolent crime is practically like the same across the board.
Wrong, because if you factor in economics, if you factor in salary, even high earning black individuals commit more violent crime than low earning white individuals.
No, that's just
it
not
is
true.
True.
Show me the data on that.
Jesus Christ. Do we got to start pulling up studies now?
Yeah, no, show me the study on that. I'd be very interested to see it because I know it doesn't exist.
Isn't this literally what's his name said? Isn't that like the famous quote from the Destiny debate? Freaking crap. What's his name? I'm blanking on his name now. But the guy who debated him a while ago, who had never mind, ignore me, I'm too tired.
Probably Sean West.
I have found it. Here is a government source, and you can see in Figure 4.
By the way, West Virginia's crime rate has increased. It increased 12.4% in 2020, which is more than double the comparable national increase for that year. So
but if you increase 1 plus 12%, that's not a lot, right?
No,
so
buddy, I'm not playing this game with you. It went up by 12.4%.
So you don't care about numbers now. So yeah, but what was the crime rate of West Virginia? How bad?
I don't know. You're the one that's staking the claim that apparently its crime rate hasn't increased. So
exactly, you're saying plus 12% when you don't even know the original rate.
Well, you don't even know how the rate was. Would you like to educate us since you're the one now staking the claim?
Well, you're throwing out numbers, my friend.
I said that. Nope. I said the crime rate increased by 12.4%.
I provided you a government source. I provided you a government source here in the text chat of VC Text. If you go down to Figure 4 on page 4, you can see that middle and high income Black Americans commit more crime than whites and Hispanics. Both these groups, whites and Hispanics, as they increase in wealth, do not commit as much crime.
Hold on, where'd you put this?
I put this in VC Text.
Okay, got it.
You wanted a source, and I gave you a source.
A source that says,
If you go down to figure 4 on page 4 of the PDF, you can see that rate of violent victimizations by poverty level does not affect blacks as much as it does whites and Hispanics. Whites and Hispanics lower their crime rate much more significantly as they increase in wealth, but blacks always have a higher violent crime rate than whites and Hispanics.
this is the rate of victimization, not the rate of like people. You know the difference between that and the like rate of crimes committed, correct?
This is crimes committed. This is
No. This is the rate of victimization. This is the rate at which they are victims of crimes.
Would you like to go down throughout the paper?
You need to go to figure 4, so that's where I went. And
Would you like to continue to go down? You can continue to see that no matter what, no matter where you look at, blacks always, no matter their income level, have a
rate
higher
of victimization, figure 5 and figure 6. So again, not what we're talking about.
We're not talking about, we're talking about crime rate itself.
Victimization, again, here at figure 7.
Figure 4 does say rate of violent victimization by poverty level and race or Hispanic origin 2008 through 2012.
Yeah, this is a study that seems to be interested in like the rate at which violent crime is committed upon a group, not the rate at which a group commits violent crime. Did you read this before you linked it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, well, I mean, you know the difference between like victimization and like perpetration, right?
Yes, but this has nothing to do.
Yeah, no, it has everything to do with that because this is all about victimization, my dude.
No, it's not, my friend.
This is a really, yeah, it is. Like, I don't know.
Okay, Kent, explain why it's not victimization.
Because who are they committing crimes against? Because wouldn't the victimization of the other races increase if this crime against others, as far as whites and Hispanics, increase as well?
Actually, people are more likely to commit crimes against a member of their own race than another race.
Yes, meaning
that's what he's saying.
Meaning that no matter what economic level you're at, blacks will always commit a higher amount of crime amongst their own. Meaning that income level doesn't affect them nearly as much as whites and Hispanics.
We can't assume.
But white is the tallest bar on most of these graphs. So what are you getting
Because
at?
they're the highest population. They're the majority population of the country. So
yeah, it's per 1,000.
Yeah, this is per 1,000. So this is adjusting for that. So what are you talking about?
I'm not talking. Look.
Yeah, you're not really talking about anything. That's very clear.
I am talking about things. I mean, we all know, because why is crime always discussed in a minority versus non-minority thing? If white crime was a problem, wouldn't we be talking about it? Wouldn't white crime be the topic du jour? But it's never is. We're always making excuses for non-white crime, but we're never making excuses for white crime because no one sees a need to, because it's not that big of an issue. We're always making an excuse for non-white crime. The food desert, the low income gap is never given as an excuse for white crime because no one gives a shit, because it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, but this is showing that like all of this study that you linked is showing is that white people are victimized at a higher rate when adjusting for poverty level. So, like, okay, white people like commit or victimized by more crimes when they are in poverty, and yes, crimes are usually when they're violent committed within the same racial group. So, like,
the victimization rate,
what does this demonstrate?
The entire point is the victimization rate increases more than any other race with blacks, despite the fact that they're earning more than a poor black. So why does the victimization rate for our blacks increase when they have more wealth?
Well, it still decreases. It still decreases, right, from poor to
it still decreases,
high income, but it doesn't decrease as much. Yes,
but they are higher than every race. And
so
we've already established that people commit crimes usually against their own people. Therefore, no matter what, blacks commit more crime despite the fact that they have a higher wealth.
The victimization rate is still higher, despite the fact that they have a higher wealth. Could that be due to the fact that people do usually commit crimes within their own racial group, and there are still more poor black people per capita than there are poor white people in the country? So there are still more poor black people around to commit more crimes against the wealthy black people, and that is why you will see it in a victimization rate study, which is very sneaky that you would pick a victimization rate study now, because I see what you're doing, rather than a perpetration study. So do you have a study that shows that rich black people commit more crimes and don't have a decrease in that based on wealth? Do you have that study? Because all that this shows is that there are more poor black people than there are rich black people, right? As compared to white people. And therefore, there is going to be a higher victimization rate against the rich people.
There's more poor white people, period, in America. But per capita...
No, I understand. I'm saying per capita, though.
Per capita, there's more poor black people, but does being
that would lead to a higher victimization rate? No, but due to the fact that there's more poor black people per capita, that would lead to a higher crime rate, probably.
Don't you think there's more poor Hispanics in America than poor black people?
I don't know. I'd have to see the numbers.
Well, I mean, we have more illegal Mexican immigrants than we do black people, period, in this country.
Hold on. I just got to clear this up. You keep switching back and forth from whether or not there are more people versus more crimes versus more per capita. We got to stick to one or the other, because the keep switching back and forth is only going to
as the topic moves.
This is a per capita conversation, right? Because this is a 1 in 1,000, basically, is what most of these graphs are referring to, right?
The problem with these statistics is people don't like keeping these numbers because they make people feel bad when these numbers are shown.
No, these don't make me feel bad at all. I'm sorry. Yes, you're going to see more victimization of wealthy black people than you will of wealthy white people, because as we've established, most crimes are maintained within the racial group of the person committing it against the victim, right? So they're going to be of the same racial group, perpetrator and victim, and there are more poor black people per capita than there are poor white people per capita. Therefore, you will see more crimes committed against rich black people because there are more poor black people to commit those crimes against them versus the white people. So, again, this just demonstrates everything that I said to actually be accurate, and that, crime is, in fact, going to be higher based on poverty.
The problem with getting these stats together is that they're spread out throughout different sources. So we have victimization rates, we have homicide, we have robbery, we have nonviolent, and they're all on different sources, and they're all on different platforms. I can give you general sources, but they're not satisfactory. I wouldn't want to give you Wikipedia, right? That would be unfortunate because people don't often trust Wikipedia.
I would agree with you that these are hard things to find, but I would disagree with you that there's anything out there that says that poor black people commit crimes at a higher rate. Or sorry, rich black people commit crimes at a higher rate than...
Yeah, I'm still waiting for that data too. But again, this doesn't demonstrate anything because it's about victimization, and the numbers that you're wanting to use to demonstrate with the victimization can easily be explained by the fact
this is years on stuff. But actually, let's move the conversation forward, because I do believe in coming to a conclusion. So let us accept this. Let us accept that poverty increases crime, and that black people are unfortunately affected more than others, and this is why they often result in more crime than others. What is our solutions?
He's a socialist. You don't want to know his solution.
I don't care. No. It's okay. Say it. I don't care.
What are my solutions? My solutions would be to not even honestly so I'm not saying that we need to do reparations, right? That's not what I'm going to say. What I'd say instead is that we identify poor communities that are struggling in areas like education, just basic infrastructure, possibly even jobs, right?
Regardless of race?
Communities, yeah, regardless of race. I'm from Appalachia, dude. We got fucked too, all right?
So am I, my friend. So am I. Why do you think I use West Virginia as an example?
There you go. East Tennessee, right across the mountains. So anyway, Yeah, no, I would say that those communities also need to have their education probably boosted by the federal government. Basically, any community that falls below a certain income average, employment average, graduation rate average. I don't know what the metrics would be, right? I'm not like that deep into it.
So we should
But
throw money at the problem areas and hope it works, because
well,
this hasn't worked in any large city.
it worked
That's the
during
first result.
it worked fine during the New Deal, and the New Deal left behind Appalachia badly. So
The New Deal. What was the demographics of the nation during the New Deal? It was much different.
well, what do you think that matters?
I think that matters because you assume that all people act the same under all conditions. Why do you believe in evolution?
I believe in evolution. Yes.
Okay, so people who developed thousands of years apart, thousands of years along a certain line, millions of or thousands of miles apart. Do you think that these people didn't develop differently? I mean, turtles developed differently across different islands that were less than 100 miles apart. So why wouldn't humans develop slightly differently? Slightly, not a lot. We're only 2% removed from chimps, right? So it would take less than 1% to make a large difference in brain.
So what's your prescription then, right? Because I know that what you're basically getting at here is that like race has an effect on the way that people behave, or some kind of IQ thing, right?
Well, doesn't it? Because this is the problem that modern democracies can never solve, right? We're always trying to solve the lack of achievement from the non-white population. We're always trying to make up for the fact that they do not perform at the same level.
But they
Despite the
are
fact
catching up though at a high rate. Like
Of
black
course they
people's
are.
IQs are going up at a much faster rate than white people's
They
IQs
are.
right now. So
Well, they are because they're interbreeding. African Americans are not Africans, right? African Americans are more white than Africans themselves. African Americans have a 10-point IQ distribution advantage over normal Africans.
LRN, I'm happy to go through any of Sean Last's studies with you anytime. By the way, I find them to be hilarious. But go ahead.
Well, I mean, despite the fact that you think they're hilarious or not, you still have to explain the fact that these advanced civilizations that we live in are still trying to make up for the fact that these other groups cannot do what the majority population has already done.
Could it be like I said? So like if we look at the education system, right? It's funded by property taxes. So in areas where like people are generally impoverished, you're going to have worse education systems, which leads to higher rate of crime, which leads to higher rate of like households where the father is not present, which leads to worse education outcomes, which then feeds back in on itself and leads to higher rates of crime. And this continues to compound generation after generation. And you take into account that one group started off like basically, I think it was like, yeah, Jim Crow was maybe 2 generations ago at the max, correct? So they never got to catch up. They were never given the tools necessary to do so.
What other group was expected in America to be given a catch up? Were Chinese immigrants given a catch up? Were any other group
Reparations were paid to the Japanese after the internment camps that we did in World War II.
But the Japanese
reparations
themselves
were also
already
paid to
inherently successful.
Jewish people after the Holocaust. Like
we don't want to open
it's
the
true.
Jewish thing. They were already more successful than the native population to begin with.
Not when the reparations were being paid to them after.
Really? In 1940, you don't think Jewish Americans earn more than the average white American?
I know. I'm pretty sure they didn't, but that might be the case. But reparations were paid to them. Reparations were paid to like Jews that were tied to the Holocaust.
Right. This was over in Europe, not in America. So what the
and in Europe they absolutely didn't. In Europe they were still ghettoized and like discriminated against heavily. The reason there were so many Jews in Germany in the first place is because every other country in Europe either kicked them out or were so terrible to them that they went there.
Jews do better in Catholic, predominantly Catholic countries. Those were not predominantly Catholic at the time. So,
if you ever read The Holocaust Industry by Norman Finkelstein, a Jewish man whose family was killed in the Holocaust, you can understand that the reparations given to those who are so-called Holocaust survivors is so wide and so deep that it is disgusting that people who supposedly lived in Europe and moved away before World War II even started are considered Holocaust survivors. Those who were Jewish and were alive during the time were considered Holocaust survivors, and they were thus eligible for reparations from Germany and Sweden, who are the main benefactors, who are the main countries responsible for paying these debts back. Also, America and France also had some role, but Germany and Sweden were the primary people paying these people.
And a lot of it wasn't even given directly to like Holocaust survivors, like you're implying. Most of it
thus
was
why the book was written. But at the end of the day, Jewish Americans to this day earn more than the average white American. So, did he give them too much money? Did they? What happened?
Well, Jewish people tend to work in industries such as finance and well, we'll just say finance, right? And the reason
Why?
that they, well,
weren't they oppressed?
Yes, as a result, hold on, buddy. So, as a result of like basically what we did during the Middle Ages, right? Like, are you familiar with the concept of a court Jew?
I'm familiar with the cope that Europeans, for some reason, allowed Jews to work in the most profitable industry possible, and that's why people believe that Jews earn more money. Like,
so they didn't allow them to. They made it to where that was the only job that they could take during the Middle Ages. Hold on, buddy.
I hate this.
It wasn't a privilege.
Therefore, I want them to be bankers. Are you?
It wasn't a privilege.
Are you this naive?
Hold on. Are you gonna let me, buddy? If you're gonna do this fucking like thing where you just talk over me as I'm making a point, we can't get through the conversation.
Don't be silly.
Please,
have to not be silly.
I'll let you. I'm not being silly. So
You're being silly.
So a court Jew was somebody who was Jewish and hired by a lord or some other kind of like, you know, member of the fucking royalty or like aristocracy under feudalism, that whose job it was to lend out on behalf of that lord or king. And the reason that they were given this privilege, as you call it, is because usury was considered illegal due to it being a sin under the Catholic Church. So, a Christian could not give out loans and charge interest on them, meaning that a lord could not profit off of the loans that he issued under his own name. So instead, he would have his court Jew issue them. Now, this might sound great for the court Jew due to the fact that he could maybe collect a little bit of interest for himself. However, if another lord or a more powerful vassal decided that they did not want to pay the interest on the loans, they could go to the Pope and be like, hey, this Jew is trying to do a usury on me. And then the Jew's head would be cut off.
Yet that didn't really stop the Jews from amassing wealth and power. And
the ones who didn't have their heads cut off, yes, great, amazing.
Yeah, like the Rothschilds.
Yes, the Rothschilds, whose patron was originally a court Jew who had to develop his wealth under these circumstances. And they weren't allowed to be blacksmiths. They weren't allowed to be farmers, right?
They were not permitted to work and toil as a blacksmith.
Yes, so the ones
you're saying right now.
The ones who weren't able to get a position as a court Jew had to live in ghettos. Ghetto is originally a Yiddish term, right? Like, that is the degree to which they were actually fucking marginalized, okay?
They lived in ghettos due to their own desire, because everywhere they lived in, there was a ghetto. In Russia, in Europe, and America, the Pale of Settlement itself was the Pale of Settlement because the Jews decided it so.
How did they decide it so if they weren't allowed to take any other jobs except for the few of them that were allowed to basically be like
because that's
the bitch fucking interest collector for a lord or lady?
Because that's a meme. Do you honestly believe that any lord in the medieval era would prevent a Jew from tilling land? Do you think this was a privileged position?
Yes, because they did.
Oh, so the average peasant was in a better position than the average banker. Is that what you really believe?
The average Jew in medieval Europe was not a banker, buddy.
I'm telling you, that's what you're telling me.
I'm saying that these are the professions that they were allowed to do to be successful, and
you're
therefore
telling
these
me
are
that the Jews were forced. They were helplessly forced to become wealthy bankers that loaned money out to other people.
I'm saying the ones who were allowed to establish
the
ones who were allowed to establish themselves in such a manner that they could actually pass down like their genes and their heritage and their professions, yes, that is what they wound up doing. The rest were honestly just oppressed and trying to do whatever they could to get by, which would usually be selling fucking like trinkets or whatever the else fuck they could find to do, buddy.
My friend, you're telling me that the Jews were oppressed because they were forced to engage in the most profitable business you could possibly ever engage in medieval Europe.
They were allowed to engage in that business and none others. And again, this was under threat of them being killed due to the fact that all another ward had to do to not pay back his loans was say, hey, Pope, this guy is doing usury on me, and he is a Jewish person, and I would like you to have him beheaded.
Well, considering the Jewish community has been consistent and has maintained its ideology and understanding of itself for thousands of years, it doesn't seem to have affected them that much. Why don't you tell me?
It doesn't seem to have affected them that much?
No, it doesn't. Considering the fact that wherever country you look at, Jews are, despite Europe, America, no matter what, they're successful, more successful than the native population itself. It seems as though this has benefited them. Why aren't the average farmer, which the Jews were prevented from being, more successful than the average Jewish banker who was forced to commit usury? He was just forced to loan money to the king. By the way, in order to loan money, you need to own money. So you need to explain that, my friend.
Okay, so the Jewish population has only benefited, basically, historically, as we were trying to tell me right now. That's only been up for the Jews. There's never been anything like bad.
And you demonstrate to me how they haven't benefited from this relationship.
Do you know what the Jewish population was worldwide in 1939?
Why don't you tell me? I wonder.
It was 16.6 million.
Okay.
Wait, Spectre, are you denying that they benefited from that relationship?
No, banking is horrible, right? It's
no, not you, Ken.
That they benefited from that relationship long term, yes. Like I said, the ones who were actually able to like establish strong like family lineages.
Obviously, not most Jews, but the Jews who were able to,
the ones that didn't have their heads cut off by the Pope for doing usury, sure, but I mean they were still operating under the threat of having their heads cut off for doing their job, Tom.
Hold on, Ken. Hold on. What I'm saying is it's at least something that can explain why Jewish people would have a disproportionate amount of representation within like the elites, right?
Yes, this is literally why.
Okay. That's what I was getting at.
Okay. So, right? There were 16.6 million Jews in 1939 worldwide. That was the Jewish population of the world. And today, do you want to know how many there are?
How many Jews do they currently have?
There's 15.2 million today. So we're still a million short of rebounding from where we were.
Why did you say the word we?
Because I'm Jewish, you fucking idiot.
Ah, okay. So there it goes. All right. That's nice to know where we're at.
Oh, where we're at? Okay, does that change things now?
Of course it does. Isn't there an implicit bias? Didn't you also argue earlier that whites have an implicit bias?
No, I didn't argue that. I said that implicit bias training doesn't. No, I said that implicit bias training doesn't actually fix the problem of like any of the like stuff that CRT seeks to address.
Are you worried about the Pope chopping your head off because you are part of a tribe that benefited from banking?
No, but I am worried about hate groups like the Goyim Defense League that came and do like fucking banner hangs outside of predominantly Jewish neighborhoods, like 15 minutes from where I live.
I'm actually aware of this group, and you're a liar. How many Jews have the Goyim Defense League killed, my friend?
I didn't say that they killed any, but when you're hanging a banner off of an interstate outside of a predominantly Jewish neighborhood that says "Vax the Jews,"
why would you be worried? Wait, you don't want to be vaxxed?
I don't want whatever vaccination that people like who have swastikas on their cowboy hats want to give me. No.
Why do you assume that they have a different vax plan than anyone else? They want you to be vaxxed.
Could possibly be the swastikas, and could possibly be the fact that they have like spouted nothing except for anti-Semitic rhetoric, as far as I can tell, regarding Jewish people. They don't seem like they would want to vaccinate me to keep me safe from COVID.
Well, Mr. Spectre, how many Jewish groups currently exist in America which provide legal, financial, and legal help to the average Jew in America? How many exist? Wouldn't you say there are more than one?
Probably, yeah.
How many groups exist to help white people? Name
Are
one.
white people doing okay?
Name one. Name one group, my friend.
That exists to help white people?
Yep, name one. Name one official group that is sponsored by the national government, that takes advice, that the national government takes advice from, that has allowed grants from the government. Name one, please. Name one.
I can't think of any, but I don't know that white people would need that.
Because none exists. But your group gets the ACLU, the ADL, the SPLC, the American Jewish Congress. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, we have the highest rate of hate crimes committed against us, more than any other fucking group.
Sure you do. Sure you do. Hate crimes. But is it white people committing these hate crimes? What
predominantly yes, but also like certain
my friend.
But also certain,
my friend,
but also
my
certain.
Jewish friend. What does the American Jewish Congress do for America, my friend?
I don't fucking know.
Of course, but it exists all the same. This is a thing that exists. So why is it?
Why does the American Jewish Congress exist?
Sure. Why does
I would assume to probably advocate for Jewish rights against like an increasingly anti-Semitic population.
Why would people increasingly become anti-Semitic?
Probably because people like you give them reason to be. I don't know.
You insult me, yet I've never said anything overtly negative toward Jews themselves. I've just been stating the facts. I mean...
No, I mean, you've heavily implied the fact that you have a problem with Jewish people.
But do you have a problem with white people? I mean,
no, I don't. Actually, I think that white people are fine. I think. That
it's okay to have a pro-white group that advocates for white people's issues?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so if I wanted to start a group called the Goyim Defense League, for example, would that be okay?
No, because then you're specifically like targeting like Jewish people with the term Goyim there.
What do you mean? I mean, isn't that your term?
Oh my goodness.
What the fuck do you mean by isn't that our term? Have I called you a goy?
I've asked you. I mean, where does the term goy come from?
No, it's a Yiddish term that's designed not just to be specifically against like white people, right? Like it's against anybody.
White.
It's against anybody who is not like of Jewish descent. It's against all Gentiles. And no, I probably wouldn't use the term goy.
But what if I created a Goyim Defense League that allowed blacks and Hispanics? Because we're all goy, right? We're all non-Jews, right?
It's a derogatory term.
How do you feel like?
Yeah, but it's a Yiddish word. I didn't make the term. They
so what?
So at that point, you're
white
saying
people made the N word. That doesn't.
Yeah, at that point, you're saying that you need a defense against Jewish people because you think Jewish people are oppressing you somehow. How do you feel like Jewish people are oppressing you?
Well, I mean, they're not just oppressing me. They're oppressing the entire population of the United States because they earn more wealth than anyone else. They are allowed certain privileges, such as having their own defense political groups and defense legal groups, as opposed to white people who are not permitted to have.
In what way do you think that they represent a large enough portion of the population to oppress anybody?
Well, they don't represent a large portion, and that's the problem. They represent a small portion, and yet they still discriminate against a large portion of the United States.
How do they? Whoa, hold on. So they only make up like 3% of billionaires, right?
I don't know. I don't know the number.
Yeah, no, they make up 3% of billionaires. And the argument that you'll usually hear is that, like, wow, they make up 3% of billionaires despite not being nearly that high of a percentage of the population. So they're overrepresented. And I'll give you that. They are overrepresented amongst the wealthy. But they still don't make up a large enough portion of the wealthy to have any kind of, like, impact on what is decided. They would need to be 50% of the wealthy or more to be able to have that kind of hegemonic control.
Would they? Who says that? I mean, isn't
That's
it
generally how it works? Yeah.
Listen, my friend, doesn't more than 50% of the wealth attributed to less than 2% of the population in this country. But you don't need to have
but
a
less
lot of
than
people owning the wealth.
but less than 50% of that 2% is Jewish. Much less than 50% of that 2% is Jewish.
You said billionaires, but millionaires also are quite significant.
Do you think that over 50%? Do you think that over 50% of millionaires are Jewish?
Doesn't need to be.
It would need to be, and it's not. It's probably less than 5%, buddy.
What percentage of Jews do you think are in charge of the European Union? Yet they have laws against anti-Semitic language.
Yeah, they do. Thank God, so I don't have to deal with fucking assholes doing banner hangs over there.
Yes,
It's nice.
which means they have a certain level of power, more so than the white population, because there is no laws in Europe. One would expect that the majority population would have laws against insulting their own people, but they do not. But they do have laws against insulting Jews. So you technically have more power over the majority population than the people that live in the country themselves.
So, yeah, maybe there should be laws that prevent people from being racist against white people.
But there isn't. And if there was, your people, your very helpful people would always come in and stop that from happening. I think that if you defined like anti-white racism the way that Ibram Kendi does, which is classifying people of European descent as biologically, culturally, or behaviorally inferior, or conflating the entire race of white people with racist power, I think that that's a bad thing to do, and that's something that we maybe should have laws against. Please, as if that would ever gain traction in the United States or any European country to begin with.
That's the way that Ibram Kendi defines it. In his,
Ibram Kendi. Wrong. So name me a single group that advocates for this. You do realize that Ibram Kendi and all of these CRT people, none of them are in favor of stopping anti-white racism, and none of them have ever.
Buddy. This is just factually because this is factually untrue. Can I hold on, Tom?
I'm glad
you gotta let me respond. You gotta let me respond to the idea that Ibram Kendi is not concerned. That Ibram Kendi is not concerned with anti-white racism. Go read chapter 10 of Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. The name of the chapter is White, and the entire chapter is about how racism against white people is a problem, and that it is a thing, and that is why he defines it as I said, an anti-white racist is defined as someone who classifies people of European descent as biologically, culturally, or behaviorally inferior, or conflates the entire race of white people with racist power. This is something that he goes over in his CRT book that you hate so much.
Yeah, I can link it to you right now.
Abraham Kendi doesn't give a shit about any of that, by the way. But I want to talk about Tom, what he said.
That's literally a whole chapter in his book dedicated to how much of a shit he gives about it. So
I just linked it in the VC text.
Okay, good. But I want to talk to Tom. Spectre, keep your mouth shut for a second, because I do want to talk to Mr. Tom, who mentioned something important.
Okay, I will shut my Jewish mouth and stop oppressing you. I apologize.
Mr. Tom talked about Nick Cannon, who got fired for talking about white people. Nick Cannon didn't get in trouble for talking about white people. He got in trouble for talking about Jews. And what did he go on? He went on a Jewish gentleman's program in order to apologize and kiss his ass. He did not go on a pro-white program. He said something that also affects Jews. And because he did that, he was in trouble. This is obvious. If you ever look at whatever he said, he included Jews into white. Therefore, he made Jews the enemy, which is what you cannot do in this modern culture that we have. You must always consider Jews different than white, because if you consider Jews white, then you consider Jews to be hated, and you can't do that. That's why he apologized and groveled like a faggot.
Okay. I don't think that was... That's
not what happened. He's incorrect, but it's fine.
That is what happened.
I know that he did also make... Hold on. I know that he did also make like anti-Semitic statements, and I remember at the time I
No,
heard a
he
lot
didn't.
more. No,
Tom, be honest.
what do you mean
Be
he
honest,
didn't?
Tom.
I just repeated what you said. He did
Well,
make
let's do it
anti.
now. Let's do it
Hold
now.
on,
I don't
hold on,
want to-
stop. I just repeated what you said and agreed with you. What do you mean? No, he didn't. I just said the
Let-
same thing you said, and then you said no,
Well,
he didn't. I said he
let's-
made
let's pull it up
anti-Semitic
now.
statements.
No, did he? Let's pull it up.
You
Let's pull up
just
Nick
said
Cannon's
he
statement.
did.
Nick Cannon made statements that were not directed towards by poor Jews. That's why he had to apologize. If he had simply left it toward Jews or toward whites, it would have been fine.
Bro,
But because he included Jews, that's
I
why he
said-
had to apologize. Like
listen
a broke
to what I
back
said
black.
again. Listen to what I said again. Nick Cannon made anti-Semitic comments. Are you going to disagree with that again?
Well, in the if I was Spectre, no, I would not disagree with that. I would consider that anti-Semitic.
Okay, you. Okay, so you
I don't
disagree
consider that
with
to be
whether or not-
anti-Semitic. I think that he made anti-Semitic statements. Yeah.
You do believe so?
Yeah, he made anti-Semitic statements, but I don't think that's all that he apologized for. I'm pretty sure that he apologized for the anti-white stuff as well.
He did.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he
No, he
did.
didn't. It was all because he didn't go on a channel of a pro-white activist. He went on the channel
But
of
he
a Jewish
still
influencer.
apologized for it. He still apologized for both.
The reason he had to go hat in hand onto another gentleman's channel was because he bit the hand that feeds. The hand that feeds in Hollywood is not white. It is
Okay,
another type of people.
you're pivoting, dude. What I said,
I'm not pivoting.
this is a red
I
herring.
know
Yes,
what
it
Nick
is.
Cannon did. We all saw what he did.
But when I say he apologized for the anti-white comments and you say he went onto a Jewish man's program, that is a pivot. You are not like talking or speaking to what I just said whatsoever when you say he went onto a Jewish man's program. If he apologized for the anti-white comments, then like that was part of it. I remember at the time I only really heard about the anti-white comments. I didn't hear about the anti-Semitism until way later. So in my head, it's still like mainly just anti-white comments that I remember. But you are correct. He did make anti-Semitic comments as well.
But Mr. Tom, making anti-white comments does not get you fired from your job. Making anti-Semitic comments is what gets you fired. No one cares if you make In fact, making anti-white comments is a career improver nowadays. You make anti-white comments, you're someone who's politically savvy, right? You're someone who's in tune with the culture. There's no such thing as being punished for making anti-white statements.
I would definitely disagree with that, but
go ahead. Give me an example of someone who was punished severely for making pure anti-white statements.
okay.
I mean, right? I mean, we would assume this would happen quite often. We live in a white supremacist country, right? We live in a dominant white culture. Where's the people fired time and time again for making anti-white statements? You can't find it because unfortunately, it runs up against your ideology. It's not true. What is true is if you make statements that include Jews in your criticisms, you're in trouble.
You're talking to two people right here, right now, who are like on board with what like Black Lives Matter and like all of this, systemic racism and crap like that. But we have problems with anti-white rhetoric. I call out anti-white rhetoric on a consistent basis on my show, and I talk about it. Even people like Vosh will call out anti-white comments. Destiny calls out anti-white comments. Like these guys.
I also think that anti-white racism is a problem, and it's something that needs to be addressed and not tolerated by the left. It has been for far too long.
How does one address it? Let's say I wanted to create a group that defended white people who were unfairly criticized. How would I even go about creating that group without being labeled a Nazi, a racist, a white supremacist? I couldn't even begin to create a group that said, I'm here to defend white people. It wouldn't work. You know it wouldn't work because this entire nation's political dialectic is directed against ever allowing that to even see the light of day.
Right. So how do you say that we go about fixing that?
I say you drop the bullshit that you've been given. You say, yes, you are allowed to advocate for white people because why not? It doesn't mean you're hurting others. It means you're trying to help a people who are obviously, we've all agreed, are under attack. So Why not allow at least one, my friends, white group?
What kind of group do you think is going to advocate, right, against anti-white racism, which most anti-white racism takes the form of, like, again, classifying people of a European descent as biologically, culturally, or behaviorally inferior, or is conflating the entire white race with racist power. So is it like, how does a group advocate against that?
You do the same thing that every other group does. Whenever someone starts to say these things against white people, you create campaigns on social media, you raise money, you say, we're going to advocate, we're going to start producing media that is against you, we're going to start creating campaigns of letter writing, of emailing, of doing social media, but you can't do that as a white group because you're labeled a hate group and therefore you're deplatformed. You're not allowed to have a presence online. You're not allowed to even advocate for yourself. All I'm asking for is an equal playing field, because if we want a liberal society in which everyone is treated equally and properly, we would allow whites the same freedom we allow Jews and blacks, such as in BLM and the SPLC.
Wait, is there a law that says that there can't be a white advocacy group?
Sure. Name one. If there was one around.
No. I didn't ask if there are any around. I said, is there a law that says that they can't have one?
It's off the books, right? Everyone has tried.
What do you mean off the books? And we have this like secret set of laws where we enforce them with like secret police somehow, or like what?
I want you to try. Please try to make one. I want to see what happens to you. What happens to your career? What happens to your job? Please, just try. I want you to test this. I want to see what happens to your personal life.
I mean, it's not really something that I'm interested in that extensively, but like,
because you're Jewish and you've got all your bases covered, right? But I'm a white person and I don't have my bases.
I've got all my bases covered. Whoa, am I not white now?
No, you're not. You're Jewish, and there's plenty of Jewish organizations that are willing to help those who are Jewish Americans. There are repatriation efforts that allow Jewish Americans to commit aliyah and go to Israel. I can't do that because I'm white. There are Jewish organizations that provide people winter relief. I can't do that because I'm not Jewish. I'm white. So what organizations can I turn to whenever I run into trouble? None. And if I wanted to start an organization that explicitly helped white people, I would be labeled racist. I would lose my job. I would get news organizations writing articles about me that would headline "Racist tries to start hate group." That's what would happen. Everyone knows it would happen, and we all know this. This is not a secret.
Probably, yeah, due to the rhetoric that you'd be using.
Of course. There is no rhetoric. That's
Kent,
the point.
it is true that like groups that are pro-white, lots of them are super anti other groups, and like it's hugely problematic. Like when it comes to,
you just laid out to me all the ways in which you feel like Jewish people are supposedly oppressing you, and that like there needs to be a Goyim Defense League.
I didn't say anything about now. See, there you go. Did I say anything about Jews oppressing me just now?
You said you wanted to make a Goyim Defense League, and you felt that it was justified. Yeah.
No, I said what would be the problem of that happening, because right, that seems to be a explicitly pro-white group. It doesn't directly hurt anyone.
Because it's implicitly implying that it's Jewish people that are doing the oppressing against that group, dude.
But again, the Goyim Defense League has never hurt anybody, has never assaulted anybody, has ever been charged with a crime.
They have passed out anti-Semitic literature. They have spouted nothing except for anti-Semitic talking points. They go on and on about how Jews are behind their oppression constantly. So yeah.
It's no different than printing the anti-white book, White Fragility, right, on Amazon. That's available to all schools. That has been adopted by many colleges.
Do you not feel like white people disproportionately are benefited by the current system compared to any other group?
Absolutely not. How in the hell are white people ever benefited by this system? We are punished at every turn by this system.
I could understand like culturally, Ken, but when it comes to like
best outcomes in sentencing and criminal justice, lower arrest rates in criminal justice, lower rates of poverty than pretty much any other racial group, with the exception of like I think like Asians, if you're including Indians. If you exclude Indians, that's no longer the case. And
being the majority gives us like tons of benefits in and of itself, let alone like from the systemic benefits on top of that.
That's the same in every country, but the second
True.
we become not the majority, which is soon, within 20 years, that will go away.
Okay, that's
So-
a different conversation, though. That's not talking about us being oppressed right now by the system. That's saying that, like, you have worries about where this sort of rhetoric and where these things can lead, and we can have a conversation about that. But to say that you're already being oppressed puts you into a completely different category of delusions that, like,
Delusion.
yes, that
Are you hearing
you just
yourself? Are you
wait,
hearing yourself?
you literally just pivoted away from that statement that you are already being oppressed by these systems to say, well, it's going to lead to oppression by those systems.
We already are, because these systems are designed to lessen our population, therefore make us a minority, therefore ensure that we will become a oppressed group. And that's the whole point.
Again?
the entire
You did it again.
what?
You went to it will make us an oppressed group. Not that we are being oppressed, but it
We
will
are
make
being
us an oppressed
because
group.
as we have agreed earlier, there isn't a single, not a solitary one digit pro-white group in America. Now, if I lived in a white supremacist country, a country that was governed by the majority white population, I would assume I would have at least one organization that would be like the ADL or SPLC or BLM or NAACP, but I don't have one.
So what? Hold on. What? Like, say somebody uses some like anti-white rhetoric, right? What does that do to you? Like, what happens as a cause of that?
It demonizes and delegitimizes you as a people. It allows people to increase a violent rhetoric toward you, and eventually it increases the likelihood that any violence against you will be justified because you are the evil group, right? You're the oppressor.
But
you're the people that have been keeping me down. Therefore, I'm legitimized and attacking you.
I agree with this, but again, that is like effective when you are a minority. And so again, until we are a minority, this is more about like what's going to happen in the future, not what is happening right now.
Well, and by the way, white people aren't projected to be a minority in 20 years. They just will no longer be the majority. They will still be the plurality.
We won't be the super majority.
So you can calm down. All right.
Yes, my Jewish friend, less than 50%, therefore not majority.
Not majority, but it's still the plurality. So you still have more people than any other racial group.
You see how this works? You see how this?
Oh yes, the Jew is playing with language. Oh my God.
I didn't say Jew. So
yeah, no, it was implied, buddy. It's okay. Don't worry.
So yes. So when should I be allowed to be upset about the events?
When you're no longer the plurality.
I'm not talking to you, my friend. I'm talking to Tom, who's much more reasonable. When should I be allowed to organize on the benefit of my people when I see a problem on the horizon? At what point should I be permitted to organize?
So it's not about being permitted to organize. I would say that normally these sort of things are necessitated when there are actual negative outcomes that are happening.
So I need to demonstrate negative outcomes prior to organizing on my benefit?
Well, obviously, you don't need a benefit unless you can demonstrate negative outcomes.
So white people can't organize until we can demonstrate negative outcomes toward our people.
If you want to say like, hey, we're the top group, but we want to benefit even more than everybody else, yeah, that I could understand why people would be against that.
Wait,
we're not the top group. Well, the top group are people who earns more in America. East Asians and Ashkenazi Jews earn more income per capita than white Americans.
But there's such a small portion of the population that
it doesn't matter. Really, if we're a white supremacist country, we clearly aren't helping.
We haven't said that.
Our own people. That's what I'm saying. But imagine if you told the Jews, look, Jews, you're not allowed to organize on your behalf until you start going into the camps. Until that moment happens, you're not allowed to advocate for your people.
Like I said, Jewish people experience the highest rate of hate crimes among any racial groups committed against them. Okay? So
what's a hate crime mean, man? Does it mean calling someone the K word or writing what's a hate crime in this country? Because we do realize that the standard of a hate crime is far, far, far lower nowadays than it ever was in the past.
So if we even only account for violent hate crimes, it's still Jewish people that have those committed against them at the highest rate.
Why?
I don't know. You'll have to tell me. I don't really understand why anti-Semitism is a thing.
Is it just nature that decides that Jews must have more hate crimes committed against them?
No, I think that it's just culturally, like, anti-Semitism is really easy for everybody to get behind, and
It's
it's not even just white
misinformation.
people. It's
I
not
don't
even just
understand that.
white
What do you
people,
mean?
dude.
I don't understand. Please explain to me, why would people gravitate toward anti-Semitism above all other forms of hate?
Because people are told that they are a disproportionately benefited group and therefore they control everything about society. So everybody from white nationalist hate groups all the way down to black Hebrew Israelites, right, and a lot of black separatist hate groups are very, very anti-Semitic.
But it's not so much being told that Jews benefit more than other groups. We already have established that Jews earn more than whites and blacks and every other group in America, and that Jews have benefited from a system that allowed them to enter the banking industry. But we've already established it. So yes, you do
benefit from a system that, like, makes us slightly disproportionately, like, more wealthy, like, per capita. Yes, but we also have to deal with our fucking synagogues getting shot up by people who, like, cite stuff like cultural Marxism in their fucking manifestos. So
more churches are burned every year than synagogues, my friend. More churches are burned every year than synagogues. Churches are burned left, right, and center in Canada, America, and Europe, and more than any other synagogue.
Yes, I don't think where are churches being burned in America?
Churches are being burned down all the time and defaced.
Okay, but are people in those churches? Because what I'm referring to is that fucking kid in San Diego that went and shot up a fucking synagogue, dude. Like, it's a little bit different, you know?
What about Dylan Roof that shot up a Christian church? Just because he shot black people doesn't mean it wasn't an attack on Christianity.
But it would no. It was specifically in his manifesto an attack on black people. Let's not fucking kid ourselves.
Christianity is a religion of white people predominantly in America. It doesn't matter.
But did Dylan Roof shoot up a white Christian church, or did he shoot up a black Christian church?
He shot up a black church, but
well, why do you think that he's targeted a black Christian church and not a white Christian church if he just hates Christianity so much?
Christianity is the predominant religion of white people who, by the way, do not benefit from a system.
But if he was trying to target white people, why wouldn't he just shoot white people?
He wasn't. I didn't say he was targeting white people.
You're saying that he was targeting Christians, okay? Which he clearly wasn't, because he could have picked any fucking church in America and done that, right? Well, but he specifically picked a black one. Why do you suppose he did that?
How do you know when someone targets Jews, they're not targeting the ethnic, but the religious part of Jews? I mean, you do realize these things are significant, don't you?
How do I know that they're not targeting the ethnic but the religious? Because they usually write in their manifesto that it's fucking Jewish people that are doing this.
But they don't say religious Jews, they just say Jews. So you don't know if they're targeting religious or ethnic, do you?
Does it matter?
I mean, yes, if we're talking about, just now, I talked about Christian churches, and you specified race as opposed to religion. And just now...
Yes, because the individual who perpetrated the crime specified race. You fucking retard. Holy shit.
You are desperate to have Jews be more oppressed than any other group so that you may maintain...
No, not more oppressed. Not more oppressed. I'm simply saying that they are oppressed, and not all of us are wealthy, so, like, it kind of sucks.
You want to maintain your privileged status above other people. All I'm asking is that
I'm not privileged, buddy.
I want to share a seat at the table. That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm saying.
I think that you've, like, made the fucking table.
I made the table?
Yeah, no, you made the table. The table was made for you, by you, to explicitly benefit you.
If it was, I would be able to say I'm pro-white. But if I did that, I would be fired from my job. I would not be able to have a professional career. But I can say I'm pro-Jewish if I was Jewish. I could say I'm pro-black if I was black. In fact, I can post it on all my social media, the big black fist. I can do pro-BLM. But if I was a professional when I said I'm pro-white, do you think I would have a good career? Do you think I would have a good time as a professional? No. I would be fired instantly. And you all know this, and this is the thing that is unsaid. It doesn't need to be, I don't need to be killed on an everyday basis to create a pro-white group. All I need is an impetus to see that white people are in the downcline and are not being treated properly.
How are they on the downcline?
They're on a downcline because their populations are on the downcline, because their birth rates are on the downcline, because the populations in which the countries in which they exist are going minority white. And also,
no, they're not going minority white. They're just not going to be the majority. They will still be the plurality, which makes them closer to the majority than any other group. So you can calm down. It's going to be okay.
So less than 50%.
Less than 50%, but
yes,
nobody else
minority.
will be more. No, but nobody else. No, that's not how. No, you're not understanding what a minority is.
I know what I'm saying.
No. Hold, buddy. No, you're not letting me finish. So
it's 49%, but there's 15%. This group.
Wow, really? The accent? You
what? No.
Fucking anti-Semitic little shit.
I had something in my throat. What are you talking about?
Cool. No. So a minority would imply that they are no longer the plurality. Do you know what a plurality is?
I do know, but you're telling me that I'm not allowed to advocate, my friend?
Plurality.
Do I need your permission?
What's a plurality?
To a majority?
No. Answer the question, you slimy little anti-Semitic fuck.
You're slimy, my friend. You're telling me that I can't advocate for my people despite the fact that they can't openly call for themselves.
No. I'm not saying that you can't do anything. I'm asking if you know the difference between a plurality.
Stop it.
Between a plurality and a minority. Do you? Do you need me to pull out a dictionary for you? To convince you that it's going to be okay and that the white people aren't going to be thrown in camps?
When white people are minus 50%, yes, they are not the smallest group in the country. That is the entire point. I'm not saying...
they're actually still the largest.
Yes. And how
long... they're still the largest, so how is that a problem?
Because that's the entire point of a nation. A nation's future is its people. And once you change its people's makeup, you change the future of a nation.
So you want a white? So how do you want us to get the white majority? What do we do with the rest of the people? What do we do?
This is why Israel advocates for a majority Jewish population and not a majority Arab population. There's a reason why the future of a people is important to a people who
you're just fucking jumping all over the place now. You still won't admit that the white population, even if it's less than 50%, will still be the plurality, meaning that they will still have a larger share of the population than any other group, right?
So what? So what?
So that means that they're not. So that means they're not a minority then.
Of course they are, because they're a minority in their entire group as a people itself.
No, they're not a minority. They're less than 50% and still the plurality.
A nation's future is determined by its people. If its people change, its future change. This is obvious. Naturally, but for how long? I mean,
longer than 20 years, since it's going to take that long for them to get under 50%.
Are you completely insane?
And honestly, that birth rate is probably going to rebound. It typically does. The only reason it's declining is because we just had the baby boomers, right?
No, we haven't. There isn't a single population in a advanced first world country, aka white country, who has had a bounce back of births. What happens is the majority capitalist government has decided to replace the working class with foreigners. They import these foreigners, not caring what culture, what religion, and what race they come from, so long as they can maintain profits.
So what do you suggest that we do?
What we do is we encourage pronatal policies. We give young women possibilities to start a family. We tell you, look, if you want to get married...
young women or young white women, right? Do we have to make sure that... Because we just had, like, a fucking child tax credit passed that made it to where,
It doesn't matter. If you want to determine the...
So the child tax credit was good then. We can just do that and just basically do other things that make it easier for people to have babies, or do we have to make sure that we're only letting white people get these
we
benefits?
Improve the economy generally, and it will increase the white population writ large. It will also increase the populations of other people if they so choose to have children.
We don't need to just target white people?
You don't need to make laws that target only white people.
We can just pass stuff like Biden's child tax credit that makes it easier for families to have babies in general, and that's good enough for you, yeah?
If it did, it did. and I would be happy that it did. I wouldn't be
Okay, I
opposed to
mean,
it.
then yeah, I mean, it sounds like we disagree on like the reasons for the prescriptions, but I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly fine with like making it to where families don't have to struggle, if they need to like uh, reproduce or whatever. Like sure,
But
like
that's not enough. You
give
can't
parents
just.
money.
That's not enough.
What more do you want?
No, you halt immigration for one. If you do want to do immigration, you wait for a few years, and then you encourage immigration from those countries which allow professionals who are culturally, religiously, linguistically, and racially compatible with your majority population.
Oh, okay, so we can only let in white people.
Well, I mean, for the longest time, that's what America's immigration policy was until 1965. I don't see why this is crazy to you. Maybe it's because of your background, but to be honest with you, as an American
Whoa, what part of my background?
well, you've already stated what your background is, and you've been very prevalent on the fact that you're oppressed because of your background. So I don't think I need to remind the
maybe
audience
if I wasn't
what you
being
are.
actively oppressed by somebody, I wouldn't
Oh
have
yes,
to
you're
point
the
it out.
victim. You notice you're so quick to call yourself a victim. It's almost like a meme. Like I can say anything, and you're like, yeah,
But he
but how does
actually
this
has
affect me?
stats to
Oh,
back that up, like hate
You did a
crimes.
fucking Jewish accent like 10 minutes ago, bro.
so
Don't
did I?
fucking
Did
sit
I
here and
stop
act like
you?
you're not being a mask-off, anti-Semitic little shit, okay?
Oh, shut up. Did I stop you from doing anything? Did I prevent you from going to the bread line just because I use a funny accent? How is that stopping you from doing anything, you moron?
It is clearly making fun of me for being Jewish.
So
I don't
what?
know.
Are you gonna walk away from that? Are you gonna brush that off? You've got
Yeah,
1,000
probably,
organizations you
because
can
I
go
actually
cry to.
talk to sad little fucks like you for fun
Oh, sad.
sometimes.
Go to the ADL, the SPLC. Go get a fucking article written about
I
this.
don't need
talk
to.
about
Nothing that
the
you've said
increase
is
in
actually
anti-Semitic
nothing
attacks.
that you actually said is going to like affect me
Then
emotionally.
quit bitching about it. Isn't that the whole point?
No, I'm just pointing out to everybody here that you're being an anti-Semitic little troll, and that you
Oh,
don't actually
shut
back
up.
up any of your points with any kind of empirical data, and that you don't know what a difference between like a fucking plurality and a minority is.
I do know what a
which is
plurality
funny.
is. The entire point is I don't want to become a plurality in my nation. I am a white person in America. I would prefer to America to remain a majority white nation.
But you
for
understand
you,
how that's not the same thing as being a minority, right?
are being deliberately an asshole or
No,
something?
Ken,
No, I'm
he's-
deliberately trying to get you to go back on the fact that you keep on saying that white people are going to be a minority in 20
Yes.
years, and they're not. They'll still be
Tom.
a plurality, which is not a minority.
Tom, don't feel wrong in interjecting. This is okay.
I'm trying. He's been trying to get you to stop saying minority for the last 20 minutes. And
Okay, so what if I say that whites will no longer be the majority? Would that be correct language in order for you to absorb what I'm telling you?
well,
Spectre?
because if we say they're a minority, it sounds like there's another group that is larger than them, and that's like the misconception that we're trying to avoid.
A nation has to have a majority in order to determine the future of its nation and the future of its people. There has never been a country on the planet of this earth.
Why, do you think white people are a monolith, that they all like think the same way and like are going to determine things the same way?
I'm going to continue. There has never been a population on this entire planet, a country, which has charted its future without caring about the majority of its population, without caring about its ethnic makeup. Every single country on this earth has determined its future based off its ethnic makeup. Even Israel, even the Jewish democracy in the East, in the East, the jewel of the Middle East, it has determined that it must be majority Jewish in order for it to survive. And it has adopted its policies and adjusted itself in order to maintain that majority, including birth rates and immigration. All I'm asking for is the same thing, because the second you create a nation which is a pluralistic society, which doesn't care about its future, you have to, because voting is determined by racial makeup for the most part. This is the reason why Republicans and Democrats always vie for the black vote and the Latino vote. Why do they do that? Why do they separate that vote? Because ethnicities matter. You must determine the majority of your nation in order to chart its future. And if you don't, then you're going to become this deracinated nonsense nation, which will quickly be evaporated and be absorbed by a larger, more powerful nation which knows its future, like, for example, China or Russia, which doesn't have a problem with talking about these subjects.
Okay, but like places like Japan that have done pretty much what you're saying for a very long time experience an even worse declining birth rate to the point where they had no choice but to start encouraging immigration from other places, right? The Nordic countries are now starting to have to do this as well. So, like, I guess we could just only allow immigrants to be white people, but you would still have a declining birth rate, most likely.
Why
Um,
hasn't wrong? Why hasn't China needed to incorporate non Han Chinese? Why have they been able to become a competitor without having to resort to immigration in order to make up for the numbers they're losing?
I don't know. What do you feel like they've done that's encouraged that?
Because they've adopted National Socialist policies, they've adopted pronatal policies. They
So you don't
started
think the Nordic countries had pronatal policies?
not good enough, and
No,
their
they had some
leaders
pretty strong pronatal policies. I would say they're much better than China's, honestly.
their leaders have clearly failed them because their leaders have bought into the bullshit where diversity is our strength, where they can make up their workforce with the infinite growth program by importing non-whites and people who do not share their culture and whatever.
They had no other choice because they tried every pronatal policy in the fucking book and it wasn't working, my dude.
Then how did China cooperate or incorporate this? How did they somehow get past this?
Well, up until 10 years ago, most Chinese people were living in abject poverty, right?
So why didn't they need to import people?
So poor people tend to just have more babies. Like, this is something that we can demonstrate like with data pretty easily, and it's due to the fact that they understand that they have to take like multiple shots at having kids because the chances of them actually living to adulthood are much lower in impoverished areas.
You do realize during this poverty portion of China's history, they did have the one-child policy. So even with that policy, they were still becoming a more
that was for a very short portion of that period. That was after the birth rate got to the point where, like, yes, they started to have to actually implement antinatalist policies.
So when do you think China will have to incorporate a diversity policy in order to compete with the rest of the world, despite the fact that they're leaving everyone else in the dust?
Probably within the next 2 generations, when you start to see basically what happened here as a result of the baby boomers, right? China is going through an economic boom right now. It's going through a population boom. Generally, well, not even generally, I just use the US as an example, right? We had a population boom here. What that means is that people are able to acquire more like material wealth for themselves. People who live in rural areas are able to move to the city, right? Generally, this is called white flight from the rural areas, right? They moved into the same neighborhoods. These neighborhoods experienced a phenomenon we call gentrification. Now, what happens when an area is gentrified? Well, usually it means that a bunch of people buy up the property there. They develop better businesses than was there initially, and the value of the housing goes up, right? So the value of the housing goes up. They then have kids who don't get to benefit from the value of the housing going up right away because it's going to their parents, that increased value of the home. So then the kids come to an age where they are able to have children, yet they are forced with the decision of being able to afford having children and being able to afford to have housing. So they can't afford both now due to the fact that the area has been gentrified and the value of the housing has gone up. So due to the economic prosperity of their own parents, they are now forced to not have children simply due to the fact that they can't afford it, and like they can't afford having the housing and having kids at the same time. Basically, they can't cover their housing cost and the cost of child rearing.
That's stupid to say.
Why is that stupid, Tom? Does that? I know I'm like it's late and I'm very tired, but does that not make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Just making sure. I know he's trying to gaslight, but
China, I'm not gaslighting you. China is not experiencing the low birth rates that Europe is. They have an emerging middle class, which is booming compared to everyone else.
Yes, again, they're going through the initial boom right now. Give it 2 generations, and they will start to feel the like after effects of that.
I have to take your word for that then, because there's
I
no
mean,
other
yes,
thing to do.
every other time that a country experiences a boom in population and economic prosperity, it generally sees a declining birth rate.
Yeah,
immediately
they drop
after.
off. And even China did their
boom,
best Sorry,
And the
China
boom that
did their best to reverse this and add
yeah.
it, and they didn't succeed whatsoever. They tried to give all sorts of benefits for having extra kids, and they couldn't do it.
You do realize this is speculation though, because China has been incredibly stagnant as far as their demographics go since the Communist Party was founded. They haven't needed to resort to the things that every Western nation has, nor has India, nor has Russia, and nor has Israel. Actually, Israel has curtailed its immigration policy and has installed a sort of racial blood policy in order for those to immigrate to Israel. But
no, you're allowed to immigrate to Israel regardless of race.
not.
Actually, yeah.
How many immigrants from Syria did Israel take during the crisis? How many immigrants from Libya did they take during the crisis? How many immigrants from any other country? No, they didn't
How
take
many
any.
refugees did they take? None. Yeah,
None.
it's really shitty.
Hold
Why
on.
did they take any?
Hold
Wouldn't
on,
that be a
hold on,
boon
Kent.
to them?
Kent, hold
Wouldn't that
on,
be awesome? That would help
Yeah,
them.
hold
that
on,
would
Kent.
be.
Hold on.
Hey, buddy,
Hold on.
if you're-
Hold on,
if
guys.
you're- if
Both of you guys,
you're
hold on.
asking- If you're
Hold
asking
on.
me whether or not I support the Likud party's policies, then I will tell you the answer is an emphatic no. I'm not
Okay.
just Jewish; I'm
All right.
also a left
Hold
fucking
on.
retard.
The Israel has a policy to where if you're Jewish, you're able to automatically get in, which is why they didn't accept all of these other people. They don't
And they'll
have
provide you with housing.
Yes, they don't have a minimum amount that you have to have, a minimal amount of like a Jewish blood or something like that you have to have in order to get in. It's just that you automatically have citizenship if you're Jewish.
So how many non-Jews are immigrated to Israel?
What that again? That's you saying a non-Jews.
How do you prove you're Jewish to begin with? Is it racial or is it religious?
Honestly, you can just say you're Jewish probably and get away with it.
Right.
No, my friend, no. They actually have courts which prevent you from marrying unless the rabbis allow you to get married. So don't start that.
It's both.
Okay, so in that case, they would probably check to see if you like had a bar mitzvah, right? Who like where you had the bar mitzvah, who the fucking rabbi was. I don't know how they do it, dude. I don't care. I've never wanted to immigrate to Israel because the idea that I'd be like basically taking away some fucking Palestinian's house to do it kind of doesn't sit right with me.
Isn't Israel worried about its population decline? Shouldn't they be streaming in African immigrants in order to prevent their
Are they having
decline?
a population decline? If they are, then yeah, they probably
they're
should
a first world nation, aren't they?
Huh?
They're a first world nation, aren't they?
I don't think that they've had really an economic and population boom like within the period that they've been there, but I could be wrong about that. I don't know. I don't know what the birth rate is like in Israel. If it's low, then yeah, they should probably be trying to import as many different types of immigrants as they can, but they seem to be doing fine just getting like Jewish people to move there because they offer them to move there for free.
Just like China.
Does China allow Han Chinese people to move there just for being Han Chinese?
It's probably far easier for them to immigrate, but either way, they don't seem to need all these immigrants in order to become a world power. In order to, beat the largest world power in the world, America, which is throwing immigrants at itself and trying to buff up its numbers, which is strange. I don't know why it's not working. It seemed to work back when it didn't need to do that. Back before we had this mass immigration, we seem to be increasing in power.
Oh, China's birth rate is falling right now, actually. Interesting.
Do they see a need? I mean, you do realize you can modernize and erase jobs that more people used to have. You don't need lots of people to do jobs in which machines can do.
Wait, so we can't automate too?
Not when we have a policy that requires us to throw people at problems. Not when our country is determined on that. No.
Wait, where do we have that policy?
Every large organization, like every big company, wants mass immigration. Therefore, they're throwing people at problems instead of technology at problems.
Okay. Well, I'm not advocating for mass immigration, by the way. I never said that.
Well, it doesn't matter because that's what's happening here regardless.
Wait. What do you consider to be mass immigration? How many immigrants are we letting in per year?
More than 1 million.
Is more than 1 million mass immigration?
Yes.
How so?
You don't think that's a lot of people?
1/3%.
Doesn't matter because the million
No,
is
no, I'm
not
saying
legal. The million
Yeah, I
is
agree.
the illegal. The million is the legal. We have a million legal limit, but we also have millions of people who are not registered. But that is also something that the large corporations would prefer to have because they love a worker force that doesn't have demands, that can't argue for labor rights, that they just have to settle. That is what our current economy loves.
Yeah, no, if it was to the point that we were allowing immigration and we were seeing like wages be depressed among the working class, I would say there's probably too much immigration. But I don't think that we've allowed that much immigration yet.
Well, yeah, you don't agree wages have stagnated for many, many years?
Not due to immigration, no.
Due to what?
Due to the fact that nobody wants to pass a higher minimum wage law, apparently.
So the only way wages can increase is if we pass minimum wage laws. Are you retarded?
No, we saw them increase when everybody kind of went home during the pandemic and refused to go back to work until they increased. But like, short of that, like as long as there is like labor available, and there would be labor available without,
you can acknowledge that like
immigrants.
cheap labor through illegal immigration has an effect on wages, right? Can you not acknowledge that? Does that sound crazy to you?
I mean,
That's very simple.
so depending on the amount of legal immigration, yes. I haven't looked at the numbers in a while. If you'll give me like a few minutes here, I can look up what rate you would have to see for that to happen. But it's higher than 1/3% of the population. I'm sorry.
So every large corporation that is interested in mass immigration, advocating for it, is just doing it for the good of their hearts. It's not for any particular reason. It's not to keep wages.
Wait, which corporation is advocating for mass immigration?
Oh, Tyson's Chicken. We got Walmart. We got every organization that throws money at the U.S. government in order to keep its policies the way they are. And there is no corporation saying you need to stop immigration, is there? No. Because if you have people who are not citizens, it's much easier to exploit them than it is a citizen. And a citizen will have grassroots movements in order to increase wages. But you can't do that as long as you're throwing millions of bodies in America that are continually ready to work for less. This is basic common sense.
The U.S. granted 1.3 million green cards in 2019.
Okay, and how many illegals are working under the table in 2019?
Probably a lot, but
yeah, probably a good amount.
Hold on, but we were just talking about how many immigrants or how many people immigrated to another country, and 1 million wasn't very much, right?
Green cards doesn't include those who came overseas, followed the paperwork, and were given citizenship and granted citizenship after following the process.
No,
there's green cards. There's citizenship, and then there's the under the table. That's all happening at the same time.
True. Your complaint was with the process, right? And you're saying these are people that didn't go through the process, but the people who did go through the process is 1.3 million.
No, that's the green. No, the green cards are okay because that's something the government can track. It's the things that aren't tracked, and it's also the willingness of the government to throw out so many green cards. When in fact we have how many millions of people are unemployed?
I understand. Well, hold on. We actually have way more positions open in the United States than we have people unemployed. Like, we need more workers right now. We don't even have enough Americans to fill jobs.
No,
right
we
now,
have the highest unemployment rate than we've had in decades.
That's not true.
Yes, it is true.
No, it's not.
Right. I actually have here I found it. So this is a research paper from the National Bureau of Economic
We're crap
Research.
people now. I'm sorry, people said Charlie Day.
Okay, so here's a paper from the National Bureau of Economics Research, right? So this study contends that previous analysis on the relationship between immigration and wages falsely assumed perfect labor substitutionality between immigrants and native workers of similar education levels, distorting results. The research shows that the average American wages actually rise due to immigration, both short-term and long-term. The only native demographic whose wages drop are high school dropouts, who suffer a decrease in wages of approximately 2% in the short term and then alleviating to 1.1% in the long term. The study finds that new immigration does severely impact wages of prior immigrants, suggesting lack of substitutionality with natives, right? So basically what this is trying to say, in case you're not following what substitutionality means, is that these immigrants that are coming in are not taking jobs that most of the people who already live here want or are trying to do. The vast majority of American workers' wages increase from immigration due to the fact that the jobs that they are wanting to do.
You say this, right? Everyone says this, but can you not understand that maybe that would influence, like, if you're creating two parallel economies, one legal and one illegal, the people who are, like, abiding with legality are not going to want to partake in the illegal economy because it's the reason is that the wages are deflated. So, of course, they don't want to take those jobs. They'd have to compete against illegal immigrants.
Okay, but their wages are going up, is what this is basically showing. It's not showing
Illegal
that
immigrants?
disemployment is a thing that's a. No, those wages are staying stagnant, but the wages of everybody else is going up.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's been a pretty common fact that wages for Americans have been pretty much stagnant since the 70s as far as inflation goes with the wages. Like this is stuff that right to work people have been talking about for decades. Are you telling me that wages have been going up?
Labor
No.
has been going up. Wages have stayed stagnant
Yeah.
wages
Why have wages stayed
stagnant?
because we employ a lot more people now.
Why do we do that?
Because the jobs that we could have increased wages with, due to the fact that they would be low skilled, right, or move up, right, they get shipped overseas now. There's more people that are competing for your job that are keeping your wages stagnant that live in the fucking global south, right? That the jobs have been shipped over to them by corporations. Then there have been these corporations bringing the global south here.
So how do you rectify this?
You make it to where a corporation that operates in America and is an American company needs to employ American labor, be that people who immigrated here or people who were born here, and that they can't actually ship their fucking labor overseas. That would be the only way that you could remedy that. But that would not make you very competitive in a global economy, unfortunately, due to the fact that everybody's doing that now, including China. They're exporting their labor to cheaper places to use it. Oh, and this is another research paper that basically shows the impact of a wave of Cuban immigrants. You guys remember when a bunch of Cuban immigrants went to Miami? Yeah, because they didn't like the communism. So the research found essentially no impact on native wages, even for low-skilled workers, despite them actually increasing the labor force by a whole 7%. So much higher than the 0.3% that you guys are worried about. And here's that paper.
Yeah, we've seen this across most of America, that low-skilled labor doesn't seem to change wages, except for in a couple small areas where it's very, very poor areas. But for most of America, it doesn't change anything.
So it's just a coincidence that stagnant wages began in the 70s and our immigration policy changed in 1965.
Well, no, that's
to allow
part of
that's
it.
just a
So we, say a company all of a sudden is making double what they were making before. Instead of everybody's wages doubling, they hire double the amount of people to work those jobs as well. So they're because
Do they, though?
yes, because speed has become a huge part of American culture and different jobs. Having to get things faster is a huge part of it. So you have to be able to hire more people at the same rates that you had them at before.
So what's the solution to this? Just increase the continued belting of jobs to people who will do it for cheaper, so I can have a dildo next day air on Amazon? Is that the future of my nation?
I I mean, unless you have a solution to stop them unless you have a solution to stop them from like shipping the labor overseas, basically.
Sure, I do. National Socialism. It's very simple.
National Socialism. Oh my God.
Yep. Well, I mean, I don't expect you to
So
like that.
just mask off
Yes.
Nazi shit now.
He literally identifies as a Nazi, so it's.
Oh, okay. So I'm not. So you're not gonna. So wait, will you let me call you a Nazi? Is that something I'm allowed to do?
I'm not a German. I'm not part of any German political party. That's
Okay, but you're like a Nazi, like ideologically, right? You believe in National Socialism. When you're talking about National Socialism, you mean in the way that like Hitler said it, yeah?
I can tell you what specific party I do belong to. It's an American party. It's called the National Justice Party.com.
Okay, so cool. But will you answer the question when you say National Socialism? You're referring to the type that Hitler was talking about, yeah?
No, because my National Socialism is quite different. It's Americanized. It is not German in nature. It is not from the 40s. It is modern.
Like Nazism means nationalist socialism.
Yeah, but so...
Well, Italy had National Socialism. Do we call Italians Nazis because they follow Mussolini? No. Mussolini didn't even have a racial policy.
So you do have a racial policy under your ideology?
The only racial policy in the National Justice Party is a cap on influential positions. And that's really the only type of racial policy that exists.
What's the cap on influential positions? How's that laid out?
It is a 2% cap on influential positions for Jews. In order to keep
just for Jews.
Just for Jews. Just for Jews.
Got it. Cool.
Well, why not? Because
right,
I mean, we have a cap for everything else, right? Too many white people, not enough black people. But I mean,
wait, we have a cap for white people? Where?
No, we replace white people in order to alleviate the discrepancy for white employees.
White people. Hold on, I missed that meeting. Fuck.
No, you're not white. You wouldn't be invited to meeting one. And,
no. But I mean, if we when we say we're replacing white people, like who's doing the replacing?
My friend, we're not talking about replacement. We're talking about equality.
You're friends, buddy.
You just said replacement.
We're talking about equality, and I think in
your buddy guy.
And a equity and a equality government, we should have 2% Jews, right? Because they're 2% of the population. Isn't that right?
Wait. How does that matter? Like, what percentage of the population they are? Like,
well, I mean, don't we have programs to hire more black individuals because black people should be more represented? I think that should also apply to Jews who are overrepresented. Don't you think equality is important?
They're not. They're overrepresented, like comparative to their share of the population, but they're not overrepresented. They do not have more than 50% of any of these positions.
Yes, Ivy League schools often have about 23% Jewish alumni.
Okay, so again, not the majority, not even the plurality, right?
Oh,
plurality is still white people. Don't worry, buddy. We're not.
No,
we're
diversity
not there yet.
programs do not account for pluralities. They demand a equality. If someone is 13% of the population, black individuals should be at least 13% of the workforce. I think the same should apply to Jews. I don't know why you're so against this. Don't you think this is at least
wait, because you're wanting to reduce, because there's nothing that says that if you have 15% black people, you have to tone it down and get that down to like the 13% of the population that they make, yeah?
Well, no, because as an anti-white country, obviously it's not a pro-white country because we would necessarily lower the black employees.
But there's also no law that says that if you have more than the average amount, that you have more than the more percentage of the like per capita that is white of the population, that you have to start decreasing the amount of white people at your school. There's no law that says that, right?
Yes, you do, because you have to increase diversity.
No. There's nothing that says that if you have over, how much of the population are white people anyways these days?
Well, it changes quite often.
Around 62.
As I ask for like 62, right? So if a school has 68% white people, there's no law that says you got to get that down to 62%, buddy.
No, there isn't.
Okay, so why are you wanting to make that law and just for Jewish people?
Well, because I think every other group has a advocacy organization that accounts for that. I don't think there's an organization.
No, there's no advocacy organization that says that if you have over 62% white people, like in a like political group or a fucking school, that you have to get that down to 62%.
Are you opposed to equal representation? Is this
no? I'm opposed to targeting Jewish people with a law that has never been like targeted against any other group in this country.
You just seem to have a complex. Every time equal representation is mentioned, you start saying Jews are affected. It seems to be a pattern.
No, it's not any time equal representation.
You said you're literally targeting them in your fucking like thing. You're like you said you're targeting them. Come on,
Well,
dude.
it's not so much
That was
targeting.
your goal to say only the Jews. By the way,
Don't fucking sit here and act like you're not being an anti-Semitic
I'm not.
little shit.
I mean,
Own
no,
it. Say
there
it
you
with
go.
your chest, you little fucking coward.
There you go. Well, I mean, we all know the rules of social media. If I were to say my true opinions, but I'm just trying to shine light on a disparity.
You just gave there, dude.
Well, I didn't cave anything. I didn't say a word. But we all know that we should shine light on disparities in education and employment. And if Jews happen to be overrepresented in, let's say, Hollywood, or
No. Nobody's talking about shedding disparities and addressing groups being over. Because see, here's the thing: this is what you think is being done to white people, but nobody is saying that just because you have over 62% of white people represented within a certain group, that you have to start cutting that down.
That's not true.
One is
Come on,
saying
Spec.
that.
That's not true, dude. People do call for like increased diversity in places.
No, they call for
increased diversity means there's too many white people. That's pretty much obvious.
No. Increased diversity means there's not enough other people. So increased diversity.
Hold on. Let him talk. That's not.
other than
hey,
white. Come on.
let him finish what he's saying.
You just put a Jew.
Go ahead.
So the way that the laws are structured right now around this, and most of them aren't even laws. A lot of them are just like stuff in universities that's like basically affirmative action. And it's like, okay, so black people make up 13% of the population. If your admission rate is below that 13%, right? If you're admitting below 13% of black people, you need to bring that number up. It's never saying, oh, you're admitting over 62% white people. We need you to cut back on the amount of white people that you're admitting. Like, that's the difference here. That's what makes me uneasy. Is for some reason, despite this tiny little group that's only 2% of the population.
Like, I'm not arguing. Okay, I'm only arguing against the fact that you're saying it's not happening in other cases. I'm not arguing for his thing. Okay, like I don't agree with that. I'm just saying, like, even in like Harvard and shit, they're like, oh, we're admitting too many Asians, and so they have to cut back on Asian people admissions. They do. People do to this. I'm not saying I 100% disagree with that shit too.
I would disagree with that shit as well. I didn't know that was something that was being done. I thought that it was only like if you're not admitting enough of a certain group that you would look at that.
So hold on. That's kind of what affirmative action is when like you have too much of a certain group, you start to use race as a tiebreaker when all else is equal. But it's not saying like technically, most of the time when we use the word diversity, we're talking about getting a diverse group of people. So even if there's like not enough white people, that would still mean that you need more diversity. You need more white people. It doesn't mean less white people. It's only in the United States where we are by far the majority that it would end up meaning by default that it ends up with like less white people, but that's only because of how many people we are. How many people there are. But the goal is not to have less white people. The goal is still to have more diversity.
Well, diversity means what?
More different types of groups.
Different than what?
Different than
Just
black.
Say it.
Different.
No,
than what?
because no one ever says there's ever a diversity problem in any part of America where there's any other races other than white.
Wait, Brenta, why do you think that is? Come on.
Because I know why that is. I know why that is.
But I
because
just
white people are the majority in America.
Yes, but I
don't think that means.
But
it's
I said that
okay.
as part of my answer. Well, no, it does make it okay because we're not saying.
No, I don't think it makes it.
Yes,
I think that's a ridiculous standard.
No,
that's just stupid.
No, you're being dishonest though because if you rephrase something,
I'm not being dishonest.
It is being. Let me finish what I'm saying. Let me finish what I'm saying. No, I think it's dishonest to say that when we say we want more diversity, there is no way that we could want that without you saying it would mean less white people. There's no way to say that.
Correct.
But the goal isn't to have less white people. So to rephrase diversity to say it means less white people, if that's not the goal, then that's not what it means.
Used. It's
No,
the only
it's
way
not.
in which it's ever used.
No, it's not. You're talking about affirmative action. That's not how diversity is used. That's how like affirmative action is used.
That is a diversity initiative. Affirmative action is certainly a diversity initiative.
Sure. But that
Yeah,
doesn't
of course.
disagree with anything that I just said.
I think.
Oh, I feel like I thought you just said they were disconnected.
Can't we solve this in finding one instance in which someone said diversity and meant more white people? I don't think it's ever been uttered in the entire human language that someone said diversity.
Well, it looks here now that I'm looking at this article from the New Yorker where they're talking about the too many Asians things, that also Harvard was attempting to recruit white high school students from what they call sparse country, which is basically areas of the country that are rural and more poor by nature.
What's Harvard's Jewish alumni every year? Is it 20%, my friend?
Probably.
So you're 2% of the population. So you're 2% of the population, yet 20% of Harvard. Now, if I said I would like to equalize,
yeah, where's my fucking degree? Holy shit!
Am I oppressing Jews by saying I would prefer less Jews be in Harvard than so other groups can get a chance? Would I be anti-Semitic?
Wait. Can you show me?
Yes,
can you show me?
You would be
very
doing. You would be
that.
oppressing.
You're anti-Semitic almost every time that you open your mouth. It's
right. So if I tell Jews you can't have all the pie, I'm the bad guy, right? Like oh you
yeah.
Wait, are they having all the pie? Are they having more of the pie than they have?
You can have more pie compared to the black people's distribution, white people's distribution.
I don't know, man. I think you're just sort of throwing stuff around now.
That we make up. Yeah,
I bet you weren't earlier, but
no, I'm not.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
You've been throwing shit around all night. It's just throw enough shit at the wall, some of it sticks, but your wall's still covered in shit at the end of the day.
We are nowhere close to where this conversation started because of how far he moved the goalposts throughout this entire conversation.
Yeah, he just keeps on moving them, and now we're trying to argue that Jewish people aren't oppressing him, I guess.
This came from critical race theory somehow.
Uh-huh. Which is funny because, one of the things that people usually try to tell me is a problem with critical race theory is that it's anti-Semitic, and then here we are, like the fucking anti-CRT champion over here, coming mask off. I like National Socialism, and I want to implement a policy that says more than 2% of government positions can't be held by Jewish people.
Okay.
I just care about equality.
Okay.
I mean, look, there are more businesses still currently that are mostly white than there are businesses of anything else, right? So it makes sense that even if that is what people were doing, that would be why they were doing it. I don't think
that makes sense because I don't think that's a valid reason to do that.
Well, wait, okay. We're gonna have to get into a completely different conversation then. And
that's exactly it. Well, let's go to fucking hit the tape recorder and let's go into Inception level 2. Let's go down.
If systemic racism is a thing, then yes, all of a sudden it would have to exist because people identify with their skin color. People like Kent over here who identify with their skin color. They'll talk about things like in-group preference and crap like that. Those sorts of things make systemic racism very likely. Not only that, but then we can get into statistics of how many black people are going to getting sentenced to higher to longer terms in prison. We can look at higher rates of single parenthood, lower rates of being able to keep a stable job, all sorts of problems that exist within the black community. And as long as they gather in communities, it's going to affect them at higher rates. If the black people were scattered all throughout white communities and they were just and this was still happening, it would be a completely different issue. But because we're almost segregated in lots of areas to where there are very high rates of black people in specific communities, it's going to affect them at much higher rates.
Okay, yeah, I can understand that.
All right. I do got to get off.
I still don't think that it's a valid thing though, but go ahead.
Okay. I do got to get off. It's very late. 5:30 here. Spectre, thank you for coming on and telling me about critical race theory.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be held a degenerate Nazi shit for a little bit. This is fun. I will do it again anytime.
All right, dude. And Kent, thank you for coming on and being our degenerate Nazi for today.
more than welcome to combat the Eternal Jew.
Awesome, man. And Brento Box.
Open sea,
you're
motherfucker.
Thanks
about
for
it.
adding
Wow,
some
man.
diversity here,
Chill
bro.
out.
See, Kyle.
Did you hear me, Brent?
Wow. Holy shit. What did you say? I'm sorry.
I
I'm sorry. Were you talking to me, Tom?
Put
Yeah.
the mouse back on. We're still live,
crazy.
buddy.
Yeah, I said in Brento Box, thank you for coming and adding some diversity here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's the first time anyone said that to me.
But all right. I appreciate it, guys. Y'all are welcome to stay and hang out in the VC as long as you want. Have a good
Oh yeah,
night.
I just
All right.
love spending time with
I'm
Ken
gonna
here.
hop
Yeah.
another one here.
All right.
Yeah.
See you.